right back here. Very special Bat Disrupt episode, season 3, first episode. We're in Amagansett with developer Michael Frank. Welcome, Michael. We're in your beautiful house in Amagansett that we have on the market. We'll put the link in the bio for you guys, but thanks for coming on.
Great to be here.
Yeah, so listen, we're in this house. This is 2025. This is your present version. And I think with this podcast, I'd really love to get into is kind of the past, present, and then the future of new development in the Hamptons, and also like your story, like the journey from the past to now. So like, let's talk about the past. I mean, why development? Like, why'd you get into building houses and selling them?
I'd say it was sort of by accident, and now it's 20 plus years later. I was like a lot of kids out of college in the late 90s and moved into New York City. And part of living in New York City at that time and still is coming out to the Hamptons in the summer when you're in your 20s. So I had come out here for the first time, even though I grew up in Long Island in Nassau County. Yeah. Really, I hadn't been out to the Hamptons until I was like 23 years old. So now it's mid to late 90s. And one of the side things I was doing at that time, believe it or not, was like promoting nightclubs and bars and that kind of thing. So with that was a great connection to share houses in the Hamptons during the late 90s. That's what brought me out here, was starting to run share houses in Quogue. And I saw an opportunity in 1998, when I was 24 years old. I bought my first house in Southampton. You know, it was quite a different house than what we're kind of building now.
So did shareholder, like, did that money then help you buy another piece?
Yeah, so I always had, at that time I was had a, what we call like a regular New York City job in marketing, but I always had sort of this more entrepreneurial stuff going on. At that time it was, you know, running nightclubs, doing share houses. You know, prior to that in college, I was the guy who sold like all the spring break trips. You know, prior to that, I was like 12-year-old with a company shoveling snow out of driveways.
Always an entrepreneur. It's just like it's ingrained in you.
It's definitely ingrained in me. Sort of just came out here, and aside from seeing the opportunity and the fun of being out here in my 20s, it was I also really appreciated the beauty and the nature, and was really turned on by the real estate that was happening at that time, which was in the late 90s, and just curious about you know, what's going on. I'm seeing like these big houses going up. How does it work? And that led me to basically, in 2004, buy my first property, which was a vacant piece of property, 3-acre property on Butter Lane in Bridgehampton. I think your mother might have even been involved in that deal.
Love it. Yeah.
But I think my sort of naivety worked for me. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs would say that from the start. I was like, okay, let me buy the property, get a builder to build it, and see what happens. Yeah. And luckily that was in 2004, and then.
So no experience, like you just kind of like was like.
I think I always just appreciated beautiful houses. Yeah. My parents tell me, again, it's a different generation now. This is before the internet, but like when I was a young kid growing up in the 80s, my dad would always get the Sunday New York Times, and there was the New York Times magazine was like a part of that, and they would be listing homes in Bedford and in New Canaan, Connecticut, and these big, beautiful homes. And at a very young age, I just had a very strong affinity toward that.
So homes, like real estate?
Like just real estate, big houses. I also grew up in a neighborhood in Nassau County, not our house, but within a few miles were some very, very substantial like mansions and stuff like that. So you knew
what like big real estate kind of looked like?
Yeah, I knew what it looked like, and I was always fascinated by it. I come out here and, fast forward a little bit past these share house days, I purchased that property on Butter Lane and had great success. I mean, there was if you were to look at a chart, 04 to 06 saw one of these Hampton huge climbs. So my timing was really good and had done really well on that piece on Butter Lane.
So you build a development and does it sell fast? I mean, how does it?
It sold relatively fast.
Yeah.
Again, I think it took a lot longer than I thought the builder would say to build the house. It took a couple of years, but actually that timing sort of worked well because the market had sort of shifted upward at that time. And then just with good timing, like my regular career in Manhattan was really taking off, and I was doing really well with that. And my neighbor, I had moved from Southampton to Wainscott, and my neighbor at the time was working in real estate as an agent, but he had a background in building houses. We connected with an architect and an engineer. This is 2006, and he said to me, "Oh, why? I had acquired a couple other pieces of property at the time." And he's like, "Why are you going to hire a builder? Let's just start something." And I was like, "Sure, this is 2006. That sounds like a pretty good idea." And 25 houses later, here we are.
Wow. I mean, where would you say from like 2004, 5, 6, where do you think development was there in the Hamptons? Like, what's the difference between then and now?
Very different. I think that I kind of remember at the time there was like two big speculative builders at the time, right?
Yeah.
There was Joe Farrow was sort of like just was pretty much a decade out of the gate and really just like blowing things up out here. And then there was like Michael Davis, who was doing some of these bigger projects out in Sagaponack. And to me, it's interesting today now to be friendly with both of them because they were really like two people I had sort of really looked up to when I first started
pioneers,
doing
yeah,
this.
for sure.
But I think differently then. I mean, when we were building houses in 2006, 2008, like we didn't even finish basements then.
Yeah, like stylistically, like and like floor plan wise, like what are the differences? Like you think from that?
I think then the speculative builders, like I said, we weren't finishing basements, and you were almost delivering like a white box, and you would almost show the houses when you're finished without furniture, these big kind of echoey boxes.
Yeah. I never a big trim, a lot of trim too. Like
a lot of trim. Oh, yeah. I mean, stylistically, things have definitely moved.
And then, it's funny how the style has shifted too, because I feel like it was like remember that Brazilian cherry? It was like the dark floor, white walls. It was like, now everything's like neutral and natural.
And who knows, it might come back to
dark
I know.
Does it come back? I don't know. That's the question. Does it come back?
Yeah. I mean, I think there was a lot more trim. But I think as time kind of went by, then we went to like, of course you're going to finish the basement. Then it was of course you got to do the high-end plumbing fixtures. And I think as we, where we are today is I think the customer, even in the speculative world, expects a custom home. So they walk into a home, and even though a builder has built it for spec, they're not looking for like a white house with basic stuff in it. Their expectations have changed. I mean, I think it's changed certainly in the price points that we've been building in, which is the $10 to $20 million price point.
Yeah. What do you think? You think that is for like competition-wise too? Because I would love to like get into that too. Like, I mean, it's probably acquiring property then and selling. I mean, it was probably like there's less competition, right? Like, was it easier to acquire land then?
I think it always in the rearview mirror it feels easier, but I think at the time you can look in the rearview mirror and say, oh yeah, like an acre in Sagaponack South used to be $4 million, and now it's $7 million. But at the time, $4 million felt like a lot
because it felt like $7 million.
It felt like because 5 years prior to that, it was $2 million.
And also the selling prices have obviously shifted too.
Yeah.
But
I think nowadays it's much harder for various reasons. It's just less availability of good, ideal location real estate, and I think more people are willing to build. So I think that the developers have more competition, A, amongst one another, and B, amongst end users who may be willing to pay more money for that tear down or that vacant piece of property because they're not going into it needing a margin.
Yeah, I've seen it. It's been really cool watching the evolution of building and development in the Hamptons just in general, and then also being from a family of builders like my dad and my brother, but they from the custom aspect, and just hearing it from them, like it seems like it used to be in the past, like even the 2004, 6, and in years prior, and then you would buy a piece of property in the Hamptons as a buyer if you wanted new construction, and then you go hire an architect and hire a builder, and you build it, right? Where I feel like you were part of this first group that really started like developing a house, like okay, here it's turnkey for you, and I feel like that market's gotten shrunk, and then more people have come developing to then push that market, whereas like that market has shrunk from the custom aspect, but then like now there's like design and build, and there's all these like kind of concepts where I feel like you got, especially you, like I feel like you've done a great job of like bringing it all in house. Like design, build, the whole thing. Like even this beautiful house we're in, like it's curated to a T.
Yeah, I think we've seen a lot more builders come into this Hamptons market, seeing that the potential upside and the opportunity that other areas don't have, which has made it even more competitive, which I think has made people like me really needing to be on the A game. But I think what really differentiates me from a lot of these other builders is that they might have 3, 4, 10 projects going on all at the same time. I've always had at the same time maybe 1 or 2 projects, and I think the benefit to the home and to the potential home buyer is that the home has gotten my full attention. I'm involved in every aspect of the home, every detail of the home. If you ever come to our job site while it's being built, every single day. There's a project manager on site. Sometimes you go to these new builds and there's just, electricians here, plumbers here, framers here.
Yeah,
but there's no management going on and it's completely chaotic, which, I've kept my model doing 1 or 2 at a time because I think it's just been beneficial to me. It's just the way I prefer to run the business, and I think it's beneficial to the home.
I think your style is amazing too, and I think one thing I want to get into is designer developing, and I feel like I always consider you like a designer developer because your product is elevated, and as a broker, I love working with people like you or selling your product because it has an elevate, you really care. There is still those developers out there that are still maybe caught in that white box phase, right? Where it's very mundane and very much the same, and that's what I love about what you even this house, and we could start talking about this house, but just the materials you use, the Venetian plaster, you have different, it's just nothing's the same. So let's talk about that. First of all, let's talk about where this house is, which is Amagansett Lanes, and I feel like you've really innovated this area. So talk about that journey, I guess, why Amagansett?
Yeah, I wouldn't want to say I was the first speculative builder to come into the lanes. I certainly got onto some of the coattails of some of the people who were in here before me. But my first build here, this has been my 5th house in the lanes. The first one I think was 2017 over on Hedges Lane. At first, to be honest, I really didn't get it. And then once I was in here, I fully understood why people love the lanes.
Yeah.
Obviously, geographically speaking, right? We're walking distance between a town and a beach. If you look on a map, you're 5-10 minute drive into East Hampton Village. And now with the popularity of Montauk, it's just unbelievable here that you could be 10 minutes in a car and you're at Gurney's. I think more to it also, it's got a different vibe.
Totally does.
Than, let's say, a Bridgehampton or Sagaponack. And what I've noticed is that every single person I've sold to in the lanes, they never come in thinking oh, I'm deciding between Bridgehampton or the lanes. They only want to be in the lanes because they know about that lifestyle. They know about that vibe. They know that they could come here and literally not even get into a car again during the course of the whole weekend. They could get into their flip-flops, they get into their bathing suit, and they're at the beach, they're at the farmer's market, they're at restaurants, all walkable, all bikeable from here.
Yeah, to me, I always call Amagansett the Malibu of the Hamptons. And for those out there, watching this, if you're familiar, Amagansett, it's past Sagaponack, Bridgehampton. It's a little bit more east. It's just kind of in between. It's wedged in between East Hampton and Montauk, basically. And I call it the Malibu of the Hamptons. It has that kind of Malibu feel. It's affluent. It's I always say, it's got a little Bridgehampton. It's like if Bridgehampton and Montauk had a baby. Amagansett is what it is, and it's just a cool area. And I feel like you've really come in here and really tried to make your mark, which is really cool watching. Was it more opportunity, or were you just we talk a lot about a compass. One of the principles is obsess about opportunity, right? It seems is that you saw opportunity here? Yeah,
and I think anywhere we're going to buy a property, there's got to be an upside, an opportunity. But I think the opportunity is that it's so rare to find new construction in the lanes because a lot of people have been here for a long time and they don't want to leave. I think one of the people we just sold to just in the last recent years, they were New York City people. This was going to be their second home, and they moved out to here, and they've stayed. And their kids have gone to Amagansett Elementary School, which is a great elementary school. Now their kids are at the junior high school here, and they've taken up surfing, and they've sold their place in the city, and this is their full-time place. Yeah. So I think that the lanes is an interesting place, not only in the summer, but in the off season, that you could walk up and down the lanes and there's actually people here.
I know it is. And we could talk about that too. I feel I always say the Hamptons changed from a resort town to a country town. And we talk a lot about that personally all the time on the phone, about the lifestyle of living in the city, here, back and forth. I have a friend who goes to school with my kids in Bridgehampton, and he lives in Amagansett full time. And he's a trader. He trades grain, which is I think sometimes the market's shut down at 3. I don't know fully whatever. But he was telling me the other day at a birthday party, he was and then he goes for a paddleboard. Right. Whatever the season, he has a full wetsuit. He'll go out and even in the winter, and he's it's amazing. At late afternoon, get out there, go walk for the beach, and it's really amazing. The Hamptons lifestyle changed. And I guess how have you changed the way you build? Have you changed the way you build a little bit?
Yeah. Just going on to that, another trend that I see, and this is a house that we just sold down the block a couple years ago, and I'm hearing about this through other agents and a couple other sales here. We're seeing a migration of people who have these bigger homes in Watermill and Bridgehampton with 8,000 feet and a tennis court and big yard. Who that's become another audience for the lanes, that they're like, you know what,
too
we're going
much.
to downsize. It's a little bit too much. And we really want to be, in an area where we could walk to town and walk to the beach.
Yeah.
So I'm definitely seeing some of that. If we talk about like the houses themselves, so I think one of my best skills is being able to like look at a survey and come up with a site plan and a floor plan.
Yeah.
And what attracted me to this lot at 63 Hand Lane, again, if we take a step back, I think if you're looking for 3 acres sprawled out, you're not a lanes person.
Yeah.
Obviously the acreage in the lanes is smaller. They tend to be half-acre lots, or some of them are quarter-acre lots, and some of them a little bit maybe 3/4 acre lots. But when I look at it, I looked at this as like, okay, it's a half-acre, but one of the benefits of this lot was that it was about 15 feet wider than your typical half-acre in the lanes. Typical half-acre is about 100 feet wide. This one's about 115 feet wide.
Yeah.
And I had done another one down the street at 115 feet, and it really gave an appearance of a substantial house. And having that width really allows you to do like a more open, more sophisticated, more desired floor plan. So that was one of the things that I really liked about this lot, in addition to the fact that it's in the lanes and like you could walk to the farmer's market in 5 minutes and be on a bike and be in the beach in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So I go into these projects thinking like, okay, I've got the right width, I've got the right length, I got the site plan that I could come up with that people are going to like. To me, that means that it's a nice size house. I've got room for a pool. When you look at the back of this house, we did the pool vertically, and I've got room for like a big yard. There's still a substantial yard back there. And we got the pool house. We were able to take the pool equipment, put it in the basement, of the pool house, which allows it. You don't have to see it. You don't have to hear it. So those are just the things like I'm constantly thinking about. When it comes to like this house in terms of floor plan, again, there's code in East Hampton, which we could talk about a little bit later, which has changed.
Yeah.
But basically here we were allowed about 3,700 feet above ground, and then we were allowed to go underground. But with the 3,700 feet, in my mind, I think, is it big enough to get a master plus 3 rooms, 3 bedrooms, all in suite upstairs?
I love that primary with the vaulted ceiling.
With the balcony, yeah.
It's really nice.
But like, had it been with the new code, there's no way you're getting 4 bedrooms upstairs. At best, you're getting 3 bedrooms upstairs, and I think that's a big deal.
Yeah.
When we look at the first floor here, right, we've got like a great room. Things that I think about, like anything over 15-foot height in the code gets counted twice toward your allowable. So we're sitting here in a 14-foot, 11-inch living room, which gives some really good volume to the house.
Just to step in, like just for those out there too, like what we're talking about is the zoning codes in the Hamptons and how that's very challenging sometimes. And really, we add a lot of value in the Hamptons for certain things. Like we talk about the value here, right? Because you can't recreate this right now with the current zoning regulations.
That's right.
And that's in the Hamptons. Sometimes I always joke, like sometimes in the Hamptons you have residents, they have like the big house, but they don't want the neighbor to have the same size house. They cut down every tree, but then they're like, no, you can't cut down any trees.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a Hamptons thing, but it's really adds value. Like I feel like sometimes in the Hamptons it is one of those real estate areas where it's like value can be really tied to what you can do, and you see that in certain areas, even like a Sag Harbor Village or something, where it's just like, it's a period house that's a certain size. Like you can never replicate that house again. It's kind of like here, now with the zoning code changes, like now you have ample square footage.
So I mean, if we talk about those zoning code changes, we were allowed 3,700 feet above ground. The new code only allowed for about 2,900 feet above ground. That's a difference of about 800 square feet plus whatever square footage that would be in the basement. Call it another 400 feet. So I think if you pulled 1,200 square feet out of this house, for me personally, I'm not buying this lot, at least at that price that I had paid for the lot, if I had only with the new code. But so the fact that the code has changed, I think there's something here that's really valuable because we've finished it in time before the code, and it's something that, like, moving forward, someone would need almost to buy a 3/4 acre lot in the lanes to get the same size house, which, as you know, finding a 3/4 acre lot in the lanes, you might have to wait a decade for that, and then you pay up for that.
No, for sure. I think that's the one thing too, like inventory issues too as well. I think added to the value here, it's like really hard to find a property, and it's it's hard. It's really hard. So I guess like leaning into this house.
Sure.
So you developed this. I love that you kind of customized this house, and I feel like that's what I love working with you too. Like it's like some developers are like they're gonna put the same house on the property no matter what. What are some of your favorite features of this house that you've done?
Yeah. So I think I went into this house wanting it to be a little bit more zen, a little bit more warm. than some of the other homes I have done. And what we did with that was used of a little less grays and silvers and more of like beiges and browns.
Yeah.
I think we've used a lot more actual oak and wood detail, like you can see on the ceilings throughout the house.
I love that detailing. It's spruce oak, some of that stuff, and the oak. In that primary too, when with that in the ceiling, it's just nice.
I think like that really has become a great trend, and a trend that I actually continue seeing.
It's
just
almost
because
like
it's so warm.
It's almost like Norwegian or something. Like some of these like neutrals, the Hamptons, you see it coming in. The buyers demand it a little bit. It's not like we kind of went through a phase of like, we were talking about before. We started with like black floors, white walls, and then we went to like, some of the grays and like those darker navies and things. And now we're kind of into this neutral beiges and everything else. And I think you really nailed it with this house. It feels very warm.
I think that's it. And I think that that's the feeling that I really want to target. And again, I think for me, I'm sort of like one of the people who would probably buy this house. So my wife and I, we have 2 little girls. Like we go back and forth from the city to here. And I think I know have a pretty good sense of like what people are looking for. And I've lived in houses that I've built like this. And I lived in the white box, and I lived in the latest house is more of this style. And it's just like an enjoyable place to be. It's very like soothing to be in this kind of home.
I feel like developers and that you build a house, it's like it must be really hard not to move into the house and stay here, and even when you build something for yourself, I feel like sometimes the wives of developers don't want me coming to the door because I'm like, oh, we should sell it, and they're like, no, get out of here, you keep selling the houses.
It's we live in a house in Watermill that I built in 2022. It wasn't so hard moving into it. The hard part is not wanting to sell it.
I know, because you keep calling me about it. You're like, oh, what do you think it's worth? And it's like, it is hard.
It's very hard as being in real estate to not sell a house that has so much equity in it. But we really enjoy it. And again, coming back to here, floor plan, just things that kind of like go through my mind while I'm making up this house. It's like, okay, we got the 4 bedrooms upstairs. We need to get a bedroom in the first floor that could fit a king size bed, because a lot of people who are going to buy this house have older parents. And they're not going to want to go up and down the stairs. So that's something else that we had here. Even when I furnish the house, I make sure to say, hey, this is a king-size bed on the first floor. If you look at the social rooms on the first floor, we've got a den, we've got this great room, and we've got a front room that could either be used as a dining room or like a breakfast room or an office.
And the light in here, too, is great. And I think that indoor which you see in the Hamptons, it's big, too, is like the indoor to outdoor living. They call it like everything kind of flows out.
From the den to that outside.
That outdoor fireplace, like especially those. I mean, talk about that a little bit too. Like, I think that's a great room. Like, even that outdoor space. Like, I feel like that's when the Hamptons, have become more year-round homes or like extended season homes. Where like I could just see like you put a football game on there in November and just hang out there.
I think that's a huge place that people hang out. I think that's something that again has evolved in the speculative world. Like, I don't think the speculatives were ever going to put that in.
Oh, yeah.
I think it was always going to be like, oh, that's an extra. We put that in. We put in an outdoor kitchen, which is amazing on the other side of the backyard.
I feel like early development was really bad at hardscape and landscaping. Yeah. And like I always joke, you could tell like, oh, the builder must have drew this like driveway. It was just like, it was like one line, like that was it. And now it's like, it's all about a lot of this stuff too.
It's all like now we have a landscape architect. Now we have a very high-end landscape company that installs it. It's like completely changed. But I think that's because the customer demands it. If they're going to buy a turnkey house, they want to be like, kind of like wiping their hands, be like, okay, we get it. The prices have evolved with it, but at least we're getting like the full package.
Yeah, I feel like everything. It's funny too. I can see being in real estate from a sales perspective. I feel like brokerage has evolved, teams have evolved. I feel like there's more competition as developers. There's more competition in development, there's more competition in real estate. There's different boutiques that have popped up. And like, it's just gotten younger, the business in general. I feel like, from development too, there's so much more like competition. And the trick, even on the sales side or as a broker or even as a developer, if you're like, all right, how do you like innovate? How do you stay ahead of the game? Yeah. And like, what do you think, what's your like, elevator pitch? I come in when you want me to like. I'm a buyer, right? What's your differentiator?
I mean, I think that what differentiates me would be if you talked to every single person who's ever purchased and moved into a house that I've built. It would be my pleasure to give a list of the phone numbers. And it's interesting. Like, a lot of my friends are the people who've moved into the houses that I've built.
Yeah.
And that's just sort of the person that I am. So I would say that I'm selling myself. I'm selling the fact that like you're in good hands with me. And like I said, I end up developing really great friendships with almost every single person I've ever sold a house with.
That's what I love about you too as a broker. It's great because like, you know, like me and you've been on showings together with people and it's like almost sold houses together, right? Like, so it's like when you're a great personal person and you really kind of understand the sales side of this as well as the development side, right? So you're so good at getting in front of people and building and making them feel comfortable, right? Or making them feel comfortable in your product because you're selling your product and like, you know, there's so many horror stories sometimes about the construction or something breaks or whatever. Right. So there's like a nervousness and like, it's so great working with you because we can go then, hey, let's go meet this client together. Yeah. Like you were even here when I brought that buyer through who hopefully will come back and purchase it. But like we brought them back through and you were here and it was so fantastic. And what's interesting about that too is like, I think at the root of real estate, despite like building or even like my business, right? Like we can all have these things that we do where I build the best house or I'm so good at this as a broker, but at the root of it's this relationship, right? And like relationships with people. And that's so cool that like, you're like, go call the people that know me and who I've worked with. Yeah. And that's so powerful.
I mean, I think there's something in business that says, don't take it personal. And I don't adhere to that because I do take it personal. And I say this all the time, and maybe it's just the buyer that I attract. Like, I really like every single buyer that has come to me, you know, and now we're talking about a couple dozen over the last 20 years. Like, I think I've just attracted that kind of person. And I think that it's just in my personality to understand that they're making a big investment. You know, these homes are a lot of money, and it's something that they've worked hard for. And I appreciate the fact that they're putting an asset, that they're buying an asset that has such value, and that you know, I take that very seriously. Yeah. Like, and that, you know, we're going to be here for them. That, like, you know. Especially, you know, I don't care who's building the house. When people first move in, and there's the first month or two, and finally like, every faucet's being used, and every shower's being used, and like the house is finally getting used. Yeah, to make it like you know, we've never had anything urgent or major in our house, but there's like little things that come up. You know, it's a quick fix, it's a battery that needs to be replaced. I mean, I hear these stories like people call the builder and they don't get a call back, and I think it's the craziest thing. You know, we get a phone call, and you know. I'll always pick up the phone if I'm available, and B, you know, if I'm not, you get a phone call back right away. So I think that's a huge thing for me. It's not like when you buy a new home, a new construction home, you've bought it from somebody else, and they can just like wipe their hands and leave. In which they don't have to stay. You're buying a house, that's that's their risk. But for someone buying a new construction house, at least for me, is like, you know, you're safe. We're here for you. And you got my word that there's a lot of integrity behind this house.
Yeah, I think I heard this the other day. Communication is a form of of respect, right? Like if you communicate with someone, if you're not getting back to them, obviously it's just like a lower respect for them, right? And I think that's I was like something I was like, oh, that's so good, and I think that's great. Like just how you communicate, and I feel like it's also like along the vein of like I feel like in modern days, you know, staying in the modern real quick, and then we're gonna go to the future next. Here is like customer experience, client experience is so paramount because that's how you create, you know, in the flywheel of business, you create those raving fans that really have a great experience with you. They're going to come back. Like all those people that, you know, you have their numbers and you'll give out, they're telling all their friends. In the Hamptons, in this kind of small luxury community, your reputation is really everything. Yeah. So. Yeah. And I think that like as a builder, we've been hurt by some bad apples out there because people hear stories and then they like, brokers too. They just don't want to like, get into it because they hear these stories. Yeah. And you know, and I think that requires us really going and communicating and like having them do their homework, talk to the referrals, talk to the house, walk through the other houses, see the conditions of them. And that's all stuff that like I like that. You know, I like when the broker comes to me like they're really interested in your house, but could we walk through a couple of your houses that you've built? And you know, the answer is of course. Yeah. When. Yeah. No, I think it's really amazing to see the product. So. You know, I think moving to the future, what's next for you? So, you know, hopefully we sell this really fast and someone buys it from this video, maybe, I don't know. But like, what's next for you? Next up for us, I have a property in Sagaponack, and just kind of getting through the ARB and some of the different price point too, different price point. I want to talk to you about like, is there a difference between a $20 million price point and your process, how you handle a $20 million price point and say, you know, $10 million price point?
Well,
12.
it's crazy that we think about like all of a sudden like the $10 million price point is like not necessarily as that high end,
Yeah.
and only in the bubble of the Hamptons that like is 10 million now is just so like a common thought.
It
Oh,
is
it's a $10 million
luxury. I feel like
home.
we have this different levels of luxury in the Hamptons. There's like luxury, you have ultra, then you have like this pinnacle level of like
Yeah.
chaos out here.
I mean, I think when you get that jump from 10 to 20 million, I mean, there are certain things. I think it's got to be even more curated. I think there's a sense of maybe getting a name designer involved in the project when it's a $20 million project. I think the $20 million projects, for the most part, tend to be bigger pieces of property. So you're going to have like bigger landscaping, more elaborate landscaping, bigger pools, patios. I mean, it just kind of goes on and on and on. But like, I think that like the guts of the house don't, at least for me, don't really change too much from a $10 to $20 million home.
Yeah.
I'm not going to take shortcuts.
Yeah.
Whether it's a $2 million home, a $10 million home, or $20 million home. That's just me. I'm not going to like try to save something a little bit here because that just end up kicking you in the butt later.
Yeah. Do you think a Sagaponack buyer? I mean, they're different, obviously. And I heard you say like a Lanes buyer, Amagansett buyer. Lanes buyer is a buyer, Amagansett buyer. But is there a difference you think between a Sagaponack
Yeah,
or what you're
I
trying
think
to put in there?
the Sagaponack property we have coming up is an acre and a half.
Yeah.
It's a 10,000 square foot house planned with a tennis court. I think there's people out there who want a tennis court.
Yeah.
You're not going to get a tennis court in the Lanes. So I think it's just, I don't think they're the same buyer.
No, I agree. I think it's, I do think it's a little bit different. I think it's a little bit, it could be in some way, like maybe demographic, like you said, like young family, 2 kids or something, or it could also be like, an older gentleman too. I feel like it's a little bit bigger range there, where I feel like Amagansett has a little bit of that younger family, beachy, like vibe of that kind of clientele.
Of the 4 houses that we have sold so far, I mean, 3 of them were young family with younger kids.
Yeah.
But the one that we had done custom for down the block, which was an amazing house because it was like the 1 acre, full acre in the Lanes, which is like, you never find, and that turned into a custom based on a floor plan. Like we never even, that just got eaten up as soon as that was listed a couple of years ago. And again, that's a family who had a big house in Watermill off of Hayground. 12,000 feet, tennis court, the whole thing, and they just wanted to their kids were kind of getting older, college, post-college, but more importantly, they just wanted like the beach life.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
And they felt like they weren't using their tennis court, and they weren't using their giant backyard, and they were like, and I think the most important part, so they've of course become friends of mine, and so they've been here for 2 years, and this would be a great family if someone was interested in talking to, because they'd be more than happy to talk about like the shift from big house Watermill to Lanes. And they said completely different experience and 100 times better.
Wow. Yeah, I think you're right. And it kind of leads us into, I mean, and the question for you is like, where do you think the buyer trends of the future are going? Like, do you think they're going to be that much different? Do you think they're going to be the same? I mean, what's your take on the future of like buyer demand out here for new construction?
I think it'll always be here.
Yeah.
I think that there's just people who like brand new.
Or
they
like
don't want to move into
or like what kind of homes? Like what kind of, like you think there's certain
Yeah.
features they're going to want, or maybe different or changing, or maybe they're down, what do you think is going to happen trend-wise?
I think trend-wise, you're going to start to see, like, you get, like in town East Hampton, which is, Amagansett included, the new houses are going to be smaller because they have to be smaller based on the new code. Sagaponack has a very strict code. North Haven has a strict code. So the buyers, for better or for worse, might have to adapt to a little bit smaller home than that they might have desired. I think modern is in. I mean, I think you're seeing a lot more flat roof, modern houses. I think people are liking that.
Would you ever build a straight up full modern?
I'd love to. I mean, I definitely would. I think it's got to be the right property.
Yeah.
But it's one of my definitely desires is to buy a property in the near future, be it on water, be it somewhere where like a modern makes sense.
Yeah. That's really interesting. So that's one of your, so in the future you're hoping to build. That's you want to keep leaning into Amagansett. I mean, where's like
I think Amagansett's going to be tough right now until we see the effects of this new code change.
Yeah.
Again, like I think being the fact that we're in business here and that there needs to be a margin. Now, what happens to these half acres that we're selling for $3.5 or $4 million, with knowing that you could build 6,000 feet on 3 levels?
Yeah.
Now rewind, and now what's that half acre worth if you can only do 4,500 feet or 4,200 feet on 3 levels? So I'd be, to be honest, I'm a little hesitant to buy in the lanes based on this new code, unless it was just like this amazing opportunity. But time will tell.
But yeah, what do you think? So like, because land prices are so high, right, and it's so hard, and you see like a bunch of stuff at Bridgehampton South just came on for $7 million, right? These lots used to be $4 million, right?
Like
And it seems like the developers are trying to like understand.
Yeah.
It's like I feel like the Hamptons market just in general is trying to get its footing a little bit and where some of this stuff's supposed to trade. Where do you think is going to happen with development? Like you think there's some of these developers, because we've had this influx of all these new developers, right? Like are they going to go? We can have less of them. You think there's going to be more of them? Like I don't know.
I think a lot of that depends on the overall economy of the country, of the world. I think some builders go in. Certainly, I don't. I actually have no debt on any home that I built, which when I talk to other builders just can't believe.
Yeah.
But to me, like the value of a good night's sleep is worth more than taking on multiple projects.
You have the clock's ticking on that with the
but like someone takes out a hard money loan at 11%, and all of a sudden the market turns, the world turns. Like now they're under a lot of pressure to sell it, and potentially they have to hold it longer. Hold it longer might mean they could actually like end up losing money or go belly up on it. So I think that's another thing when people go and look, hire builders for them, or even look at spec houses, like who's the builder?
Yeah.
Can they afford to continue to service the house?
Yeah, that's what I love about you too, because you kind of keep it small, but it's really about kind of profitability and doing well and not laying yourself with debt, where some of these builders sometimes are. It's kind of like any entrepreneur in any business, or even like real estate or brokerage or whatever. Like you're layering with debt, you're trying to grow, you're trying to spend. Like we're talking about that off camera, like growth versus profitability. Like you kind of want to be leaning towards in this world, like more toward the profitability. And some of these developers too, I've seen too, it's kind of like they almost operate like a hedge fund. They just raising capital, maybe they have equity. So there's like so many different ways to cut it. But it's kind of cool that you're kind of, which seems like just the way you build too is very hands-on.
Yeah, I mean, for lack of it feels a bit mom pop in the sense that like I'm involved in all of the decisions.
Yeah.
And it's it's my money that's being invested, and that the money that I've worked for. So I think that comes out in the quality and in the relationships that I have with the people that I end up selling houses to. But going back to your point about those $7 million lots I think we were talking maybe like about Summerfield, right? Yeah. Which was a house that we had finished 2023.
Yeah, there's a couple on Mecox right now. That other one just came out on Cobb Road for
I remember people thought I was nuts on Summerfield. I had paid $5 million for the teardown.
On reserve too. Yeah.
On reserve, and now not as good lots are at $7 million.
With no reserve.
But what's interesting is that like some people would be like, oh, these speculative guys, they don't like it, blah, blah. We're the ones who actually push up the market.
Oh,
the only reason they're asking $7 million is because we ended up getting $13 million on the block. So it gives them now the comp and the math to ask these higher numbers.
As a broker, sometimes it makes our job hard too, because we'll talk to like the resale person, and then they're like, well, this traded for 12 down the block. Like, yeah, that was 10,000 square feet. Your house was built in like 1994, like no disrespect to it. Like,
right.
So that's like the hard jam up sometimes in the Hamptons markets, like the resale stuff too. Like what's that worth in comparison to the new construction, right? Sometimes you have these homes that fall between like a tear down or land value, and then something that's like in the middle. And those are always the hardest ones to sell.
Those are really hard. When the house was built 70 years ago and it's like literally falling apart.
Yeah.
We know what it's worth. It's worth what the land
Or
is.
it's like someone, because that's what's interesting in the Hamptons market too, which I do feel like has bring volumes down. That's why I'm like, it's not really a demand issue in the Hamptons. It's some more of a product issue because the new construction's here, but you don't. And then when everyone's looking at these beautiful homes like this, and then you have this other, like if you go into this and you go into a home that was built even like new development 10 years ago, sometimes
very different.
It's different, right? The floor plan's different. Like you talk about the modern influence, and that's one thing in the Hamptons too, which I think maybe that is for the future. You'll see that continue to impact is like big open modern floor plans, like the transitional, right? Traditional, outside more feel. Once you get in, it's more of that modern openness, which you nailed with this house for sure.
And I think that's what people like. They like to see the glass. I mean, it's a little bit the struggle in Sagaponack is that they're, and some of these other villages where you have to go in front of the ARB, they don't love some of this big glass that's going on.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of nuances to that as well.
Yeah. I mean, we talked about good night's sleep. I mean, is there anything that keeps you up at night?
Well, having a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old could keep you up at night.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, I think after 20 years, of doing this, I've sort of gotten to a point where like I really enjoy it, and from a personal level, like I don't really, I don't want to take on anything that is going to give me financial stress, and I kind of value a good night's
You are a
sleep.
pretty chill guy. I think I feel like maybe that's just because you just got it down and think a little bit too. Like I think you really do have like a calmness about you, which is cool to deal with as
Yeah.
on the other side of things. But it's great having you on, Michael. I guess like before I let you go too, I mean like is there anything like new areas of the Hamptons or new things you think is going to like develop, or you think we're kind of like everything's kind of pretty much pretty much discovered out here?
No, I don't. I like to say I'm kind of an expert from Watermill over to Amagansett. I don't know like every single nook and cranny that like you probably know.
Yeah.
You can't help but think that south of the highway stuff is just going to continue.
It's like the Upper East Side. It's going to have value.
It's always going to be there. People want to be south. There's always going to be a demographic that just is not going to go north. They want to be south. They want to have access to the beach and not have to cross the highway. So I think that's like super prime. But then again, like you go into like some of the Bridgehampton North areas, like from 27 up to Scuttle, the Butter, the Mitchells,
So
the
much
Lumbers.
push north, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, those are sort of like at another level of a typical north of the highway. I don't think they're at the south of the highway levels, but they're there. It still has that very farm field view. But some of these new constructions you see going up in the woods, deep in the woods, up north, they're asking big numbers. It'll be curious to see if
It's
they
I'm
get
curious
it.
to see where the absorption comes, man. So, Michael, so great having
Yeah,
you on.
thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, man. So.
Thank you.